One of the important things that happened because Bengal is the bridgehead is it receives the impact of some of the educational and social reforms. It is the first to receive the impact of educational and social reforms. So Western education, for example, comes to Bengal in around 1817 when the Hindu college is set up, which is nearly 2 decades earlier than the setting up of the Elphinstone College in Bombay. I'm taking the example of Bombay because you are in Bombay, and many of our listeners might be Bombay based as well. So that's the time lag, nearly 2 decades. And also the social reforms, the milestone social legislations, modern social legislations that are carried out, abolition of sati, the introduction of the widow remarriage for Hindus, all these happen out of Calcutta because of campaigns carried out by Bengalis like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. And education flourishes. So Bengal has, by the 1860s, 1870s, very flourishing, very vocal, very well educated, Western, westernized literati. These are people that are very well versed in what has been taught to them in first Hindu college and then Presidency College, and then after that in 1857 when the University of Calcutta is set up. So they are well versed in literature, they are well versed in Western political philosophy, they are well versed in um, political economy. Many of them have read Adam Smith and Ricardo. And so, but more importantly, they are in tune with what is happening in the West, the ideals of liberalism. John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, the ideals of liberty, democracy, they have imbibed these ideas through the education that they have received in Hindu College and Presidency College and in Calcutta University. But when they are coming out of the portals of these educational institutions and facing the reality of British ruled India, they are discovering that the reality does not match what they have actually been taught. There is no democracy in India. British rule in India, for all practical purposes, is a despotism. British rule has an exploitative presence in India. It is draining wealth, as the phrase went, from the 1880s onwards. The phrase was coined by Dadabhai Naoroji, a Bombay person, that there is a drain of wealth happening from India to Britain, which is making India poor and Britain rich. And very importantly, if we are to understand how nationalism emerges, this Western educated intelligentsia begin to use their training, their education to look at India's past, a past that British administrators, British rulers, British bureaucrats like Thomas Babington Macaulay, James Mill, the man who wrote the history of British India, which was supposed to be the Bible for civil servants who are coming out to India from England, they all denigrated India's past. India had no history. James Mill went to the extent of declaring India had no history before the arrival of the British. The whole of the history of India could be written, Mill famously wrote, as a chapter of British history. So India has no history. And Macaulay ridiculed India's past by saying that, the entire corpus of Indian learning, just imagine this, the claim, the arrogance of this statement, the entire corpus of Indian learning would not even fill 1/2 of my bookshelves, right? So out of this denigration, or to counter this denigration, to find out if this denigration has any validity, this sections of this Western educated intelligentsia in Calcutta and then subsequently in Bombay and Madras as well, they begin to look into their past and they discover that exactly the opposite of what they were taught is true. Bengal not only has a history, it has a philosophical tradition, it has a literary tradition, it has a political tradition, and this is a tradition that can in no way be denigrated. In fact, it is a tradition for which Indians should be of which the Indians should be very proud. This is the beginning of a kind of an assertion and a self-confidence and an establishment of a kind of an identity that as Indians, we have nothing to be ashamed of, and then we should assert our identity. This is the beginning, the seeds of nationalism, if you like. The idea of pride in one's sense of belonging to a geographical space.
Subscribe to Sarmaya and be a part of the stories and conversations around art, history, and culture.